When people think of electronic dance music, many times they think of an instrumental track without a vocalist. The reason behind this is because most electronic music producers are self-taught and haven't had the experience to go through and learn how to record a vocalist and then also do all the vocal processing and mixing that is required to have clean, coherent vocals in a mix. Plus, singing is a skill that takes a lot of time to build and develop. So, due to lack of skill in most electronic dance music producers, you only see vocals in some of the highest performing artists. Today I'll be showing you the general process for recording vocals in electronic dance music. Look at this as a framework or a bird's eye view that you can use to piece together your vocal productions in your own tracks. It's going to be annoying. It's going to take you hours at a time to adjust tiny little details because as a human, we're going to understand any little changes in pitch or in tone of our voice, and we'll be able to notice all the little bad things much more easily than we would with, say, a guitar or with a flute or a normal instrument. So let's get into it. I'm being really raw with you guys right now. This is my recording closet, so I've got sound treatment everywhere so there isn't any kind of echoing from my voice. I've got a Yeti stereo microphone, and then what I'm doing is I have this cable that goes out from the microphone under the door, and then my computer's out here. So instead of having extra noise from this device, which is going to get in the way of the recording, instead I'm able to keep the actual computer and the recording device completely separate just by closing this door here. So now I'm locked in and I can record, and we're going to do lots of attempts. A lot of them are going to sound like crap, but that's just part of the process. So don't be afraid to record vocals. You'll only improve, and you got to go through the system again and again in order for it to just feel second nature, for it to just be something that you've practiced up to the point where it's easy. So I'm going to go record vocals, and we're going to see how the heck it goes in maybe 15-20 minutes. So the first step of processing vocals after you recorded them, I'm going to assume that you've recorded the same thing over about 10 times, is we're going to make pretty much a Frankenstein of only the best bits, and then we're going to use all the extra slightly off tune, not as good parts to make backing vocals. So what I've done here is I've got, again, sort of a template of the song that I'm working on, not fully finished by any regards, and I've got my vocals here all kind of layered up in terms of what I think is going to sound the best. So I took the best of each phrase and I've kind of lined it up. So this was one take, this was another take, this here was a different take. And if I were to play them out for you, you'll notice that they don't sound amazing, but they're the best takes of all of the other 5 that I did.
So why does it feel like my life is going insane?
So we're a little off key. We'll get to that in a moment. But the big thing I want you to pay attention to is the vocals don't sound amazing on their own, but once we layer a bunch of them together, for example, we've got the lead, and then we used all the extra recordings we did to make a backing left and a backing right pan vocal, we then end up getting something like this.
Why does it feel like my life is going insane?
Which sounds a little bit better. Again, not amazing. We still have to do some pitch correction. We still have to do some actual vocal processing, like compression to it. But if I were to play it with the track we've been writing.
So why does it feel like my life is going insane?
Again, not amazing yet. What we need to do is first adjust some of the amplitude here. So if you notice, the human voice has all these ups and downs in terms of how loud we are, especially when you sing. If you work with a really good vocalist, they'll be able to hold their amplitude at around the same level. So if they start to sing higher, they're not necessarily going to get like much louder. I'm not as trained as the average vocalist, so for me, as you notice, we have this like really quiet section here, and we have these really loud sections. The goal is to kind of even those out, and the way we're going to do that is with a mixture of vocal writing and compression. So if I were to take this little clip,
does it feel like my life is going insane?
Vocal writing is going to be a tool that allows us to change the amplitude inversely to the signal coming in. Luckily, Waves has a good plugin for this, and if you notice what it's doing is when I'm singing louder, it's bringing down the amplitude of the track itself. So similar to how a compressor is going to reduce volume when you hit above a certain threshold, this rider is going to do the same thing. And this used to be an old art, a lost art. The audio engineers would manually do this by hand with an actual slider on a physical mixer. Now we've got plugins to do it for us. So this is going to adjust the amplitude as it is. And then we're also just going to use compression to do the exact same thing. except compress the signal so it sounds a little bit more full. For speed, I'm literally just going to use an OTT, which is a nice multi-band compressor.
Does it feel like my life is going in?
So again, we're trying to reduce that dynamic range, or the difference between the loudest and the quietest parts of the song. Once we have these vocals processed, we're going to bring them into another session of FL Studio here, where it's much easier for us to work with just our original lead and our backing vocal.
Why does it feel like
And again, like, I know I'm a little pitchy here. I was really just doing this as a test to show you guys. I didn't warm up my voice, so I apologize. But if you notice what we're doing, this is the same thing that any artist is going to do. They're going to have lead vocal, they're going to have backing vocals that they can bring in and out when they want to increase the energy of the vocal. And then many times they'll also record harmony. I'll be getting into how to use vocoders to do that a little bit later, because that's a very easy way to create harmony from nothing. But right now, this is pretty much the simplest way to do things. And once again, if you notice the dynamic range that they had before versus now, everything is a little bit more even
so? Why does it
in how
feel
loud
like
the
my
vocal
life
is,
going?
which will allow it to have presence when it's actually playing through the original track.
So why does it feel like my life is going insane? Whoa, and why does my heart screaming pain from the same game? I know, and I
Adaptive reverb is great because I don't have to use automation clips in order to adjust what areas of the mix are going to have more or less reverb. What I mean by that is, if I play this vocal,
Souls are made of flames.
I have all this empty space before the next phrase.
Our heart is in your name.
So normally what you would do is you would have reverb, you'd have it nice and low, not super wet, so you can hear the vocal and it sounds crisp in your ear. And then for this blank spot here, we would then bring in the reverb's wetness, so we bridge that gap with a little bit more sound. Now, the problem with this is if you have a lot of vocals, you're going to need to go through the whole track and adjust all this automation, and you're never going to do it perfectly. So what we're going to do is we're going to take in the actual amplitude, or how loud the vocal is, and if the vocal is going to be louder, like here, we're going to have the reverb automatically adjust and duck. And we're going to use a peak controller in FL Studio to do that. You can do this in Ableton as well with very similar tech, but for now I'll show you in FL Studio. We've got our reverb. I'm going to link this to a controller. I'm going to select the peak controller that I have on this mixer track, and I'm going to set the mapping formula to be inverted. And this allows me, when I play the reverb,
Souls are made of flames.
for the volume to be adjusted, which you can see over here in the mixer channel. So if I adjust the reverb how I want, I like to have quite a bit of decay. I'm going to low cut it. And then I can adjust the peak controller here
Souls are made of flames.
to adjust how much
It's
it's affecting the reverb.
Our souls are made of flames. Our heart is in your name.
So now if you notice, when I play the vocal,
Our souls are
when
made
it's
of
singing, there's very little reverb.
flames.
And then when it's not
Our
singing,
heart is in your name.
the reverb comes in and fills that space automatically without me having to draw in anything in
Our souls
terms
are
of
made
automation.
flames.
In order to make vocals more interesting, we can use both an octave above and an octave below and change when one is playing versus the other. For example, I have this raw vocal here,
Can I be your star tonight?
and then I have a duplicate. It's the exact same thing, except then it swaps to an octave above and an octave below. So when I play the whole thing together with the normal layer on top and add in this extra little breath to give it a little more emotion and to feel more like a person singing the vocal live in front of you, we get this.
Can I be your star tonight? You fill my soul with light the day you
Hear that higher
leave
octave? And here's the lower.
I don't wanna leave your side.
Again, it's subtle, but it adds a little extra variation that makes the vocals a little more interesting. In terms of mixing and mastering, one of the most powerful things you can do with vocals is have them cut through the mix with an adaptive EQ. So I'm using a tool called Track Spacer. which allows me to send the vocals into my sidechain. And my sidechain route, or my sidechain bus, has all of my instruments except for my drums. And what I'm able to do is pretty much take an EQ curve, and anywhere there's a big peak in the vocals, I'm basically inversing that peak in the EQ curve on the sidechain. So if I were to have something like a bunch of plucks here, as you can listen, I'm able to then take the vocals and have them duck through this pluck in an adaptive EQ.
A million years from now, the seasons are changing, the nights ever fading. It's time we left the
So with Track Spacer, I can adjust this amount setting here, and I have the vocals sidechained to this track. So the vocals are playing right now, we just can't hear them, so you can hear what's going on with everything in the background. So if I turn the amount up, if you notice, in the exact range where the vocalist is singing, the entire track is being turned down a little bit, which is allowing, once we turn the vocals back on, the vocals to then cut through the mix. So if I turn the vocals back on slowly,
I'm an addict for your love, it keeps me high, keeps me high.
so it's very easy now for our vocals to cut through the mix because we have a process that is adaptively adjusting an EQ where the main frequencies of our vocals are occurring. Vocoders are one of my favorite things to use with vocals because it allows you to very easily add extra harmony and create a cool electronic robotic effect. What I'm doing here is I have a normal
Eternity,
vocal line playing,
we'll sail
across the lights beyond the sky. And then I have these saw chords here that you can't hear but are being sidechained to this vocodex. So when I play the normal vocals, they're going to get carried by the vocoder, and that's going to allow us to then have almost a duplicate of the original vocal, but in the chords of the saw that we're sending to this mixer track via sidechain.
Sail across the lights beyond the sky, I'll be with you eternally.
If I remove the raw vocal, you can hear very clearly what's going on.
I'm an addict for your love, it keeps me high.
Isn't that cool? So again, vocoders are one of my favorite things to use to automatically create harmony from just a normal lead vocal. Those are my 2 cents on how to record and process vocals. It's going to take a lot of practice, it's going to take a lot of headache, it's just part of the process, so stick with it, work through the failure, and then at some point you'll be able to release your own tracks with your own vocals, which almost always resonate better with listeners than not having vocals. So I hope this video helped you, and if it did, make sure to give a like and consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next one.